I've been making videos about grammar trees and paragraph trees recently, and I've been teaching grammar for years now. I wanted to talk about why it's important and worth learning. There are two basic paths to getting really good at philosophy. Path one is you start doing beginner level philosophy, and then you practice for a while and you move up to mid-level philosophy, and then you keep practicing and keep getting better, and you move up to advanced philosophy. The problem with this path is it is extremely rare that anyone gets past mid-level this way. They start as beginners, they have discussions, and they're not very good at it, and with practice and experience, they make it up to mid-level. They get better instead of terrible. However, almost no one gets really good this way. There's no actual plan to it. You just kind of try stuff and fix some things. So one way of putting it is no one becomes a philosophy genius by this method. If you just want to be okay at philosophy, you can do whatever, and if you spend time on it, you'll probably get sort of okay eventually. It depends what you define as okay, but if you just want to be better than the average person at it, you can do that with no great plan. So then the second path to getting good at philosophy is to look at what skills do you need to actually be really good at philosophy, and to recognize that it is way too hard to learn everything at once or to learn everything in a disorganized way. To get really good, you have to leverage your subconscious. You have to use practice to improve your intuitions and program your subconscious to do good things for you. You can't do everything just using your conscious attention. You'll never be great at philosophy without having a great subconscious supporting you. So you have to find chunks that you can learn as individual skills, which you practice until they become second nature, automatic, intuitive. In other words, your subconscious does them for you. The reason people get stuck at mid-level philosophy is you can only add a certain amount past what your subconscious can do using your conscious mind. It's like if your subconscious mind is at 120 IQ, then the maximum IQ of your philosophy is going to be 135. These are just rough numbers, and IQ has its problems. But you take your IQ that comes naturally to you, and then with conscious effort, maybe you add 15. If you want to get past that and get better, you have to find ways to improve your subconscious. That means breaking philosophy down into approachable chunks that you can learn. We already do this when we're learning lots of things. For example, you can automatically recognize sentence fragments when you read. You don't have to think about, are there any sentence fragments here? You just read, and then you notice something is wrong in the sentence. Not everyone does every time, and that's a problem, but a lot of people are already quite good at this. Similarly, your subconscious can do touch typing. Everyone who is good at touch typing has a subconscious that is good at it. If your subconscious can only type at 50 words per minute, then the max you're going to get when paying conscious attention is only a little bit more than that, if it even goes up. Sometimes conscious attention is just slower. It tends not to be very good for speed-based tasks. So to get good at philosophy, you have to find chunks that you can automate so that your subconscious does them really well. That means not just learning how to do them, but practicing them until they seem really easy and automatic to you and they take very little attention. That frees up your conscious attention to do more advanced things. And you have to keep doing that layer after layer after layer. So the reason I found people get stuck with philosophy is their intuition and their subconscious is making a bunch of errors, and those errors are overwhelming when they try to have conscious discussion at an advanced level with high quality standards and trying to actually get things right instead of just kind of everyone says a bunch of stuff and you're like, oh, that guy's stuff seemed a little bit better. If you're having that kind of vague discussion, it doesn't matter so much. If you're actually trying to reach conclusions and figure out answers to issues that are true, then you need quite high quality standards. And so I've identified some of the things people are bad at that they can practice and get better at as a first step towards philosophy. You have to start kind of near the beginning. Where are your automatizations not good enough? You can only go a few layers past that before you get stuck unless you go back and fix those automatizations. So there are a few different areas to look at early on. One is math and logic stuff, and another is grammar and reading and writing stuff, language. People make a lot of mistakes when reading and interpreting what they've read, and they don't realize how many mistakes they're making. And then they don't realize that that is why they're having trouble with philosophy, and they just don't have the same natural talent as other people. It is because their automatic ways of reading and thinking about things have flaws in them that can be fixed with practice of those issues. But if you don't know what the problem is and you never try to improve it, then you will be stuck and you'll never be a super clever philosopher. If you just try to read the most fancy, best, or advanced philosophers, be it Plato and Kant or Popper and Rand, you're never going to be as good as them unless you can fix some of your subconscious policies, habits, etc. What they're doing differently than you are is not primarily knowing more things than you about philosophy or being cleverer than you. Rand said instead of being smarter than other people, she thought the difference was she had more integrity than them. I think that's important, and lack of integrity is a pretty common problem. But I think poor automatizations are a bigger problem and an easier to solve one. In order to improve an automation, you have to find a way to do conscious practice where you can tell whether you're getting things right or wrong, so you know when to adjust your practice. If you're not sure if your answers are good or bad, then what you're doing is too hard for you in some way. It is out of your current reach. You need to find something where you can actually judge for yourself with your own knowledge, with high confidence and very high accuracy, whether you're getting it right, so you can practice it and then fix your errors. So over the years, I kind of backed off to easier and easier things while trying to figure out what people were struggling with. And I've now discovered that people make a lot of reading errors at the level of grammar, misunderstanding which words modify which other words and how the words are grouped together. And that is a practicable thing. And I've gotten people to practice it, and it has actually worked. People have been able to learn it and significantly improve it. They've been able to figure out how to do conscious grammar analysis at a competent, reasonable skill level that's good enough. They've been able to figure out how to make the trees. This is something that regular people can actually do, and it is a step towards being a great philosopher. The next step after sentence trees is paragraph trees, and the next step after that is article trees or essay trees, chapter trees, some sort of higher level grouping where you read many paragraphs together. Grammar trees are the simplest and most objective. Not exactly simple, but it doesn't take a lot of judgment. It's fairly clear cut what the right and wrong answers are. Some of the detail issues are actually really tricky, but they don't matter that much. The important stuff, getting the basics right, is not very controversial. When you move on to paragraph trees, it gets a little harder because one of the main ideas there is you write out what is the relationship between this sentence and some other sentence. You not only put the sentences or possibly clauses into a tree as nodes and figure out the structure, but you also add relationship nodes that explain how the things connect together. And it's harder to tell whether you're right or not when you're writing a one sentence explanation of a concept. But I think it is something people could manage to do. It's a lot easier than just jumping into the deep end and trying to learn hard philosophy stuff. The only person I've gotten to practice paragraph trees very much is Max. We did it during tutoring sessions, and he did fine with it. He was good enough at it. It was working okay. Other people often just sort of stop practicing at some point. Some of them actually stick to grammar too long because it's not that hard, and they like doing something where they're succeeding rather than moving on to a new thing where they have to struggle again at first initially. They're going to be a bit confused and find it a bit hard, so they stick with the thing they're good at. And some people just don't persistently try to work on things and improve over time. And I don't entirely know why or what's blocking them. I mean, I know a lot of common blockers, but I see people start practicing grammar trees and they're having fairly rapid success. It looks like it's working. They don't seem stuck. They seem reasonably good at it pretty quickly. But then they stop instead of taking it to the next level, and I don't know why. I know one of the general patterns in my thinking and my interaction with people is I push more and more for education rather than debate. I used to assume people were a lot more competent than they are, and that we just have to discuss the high level issues, the controversies. That's what people usually want to do when it comes to politics or philosophy. They want to debate minimum wage or a particular war or free will or something about AI. And those topics are very hard and the discussions are not very productive. Some people find them entertaining, but they're not very good at actually coming up with correct answers that people can agree on. And so I've pushed more and more in the direction of education. And I think that applies to politics. What will actually change people's minds is not debating the issues, but studying the topics, like learning some economics, rather than having an argument about an economic claim. But a lot of people do not want to be students. They don't want to go back to school. They don't want to study. They don't want to need education. They want to already be wise. So that's one of the reasons they got stuck. Sometimes I assume it's just life gets in the way. They get busy with other stuff. If that's happening, they could post on the forum about scheduling difficulties and how to manage it better. And I've given quite a bit of advice related to scheduling. For example, to have buffers. Don't book your schedule solid. Keep about 1/3 of it as flexible time. That way, you don't get screwed over when there's variance in how long things take. Also, people tend to underestimate how long stuff will take. They're biased in assuming they'll have plenty of time. They're like, "Oh, I'll be able to do all these things I want. I'll do them fast." And that's often unrealistic. So if you're doing that a lot, you'll need even more than 1/3 flexible time. I write a lot of articles like on the Critical Fallibilism site, and I try to make them fairly easy to read and understand. And I think they can help people some, but they're not as effective as actually practicing things yourself and working your way up step by step with self improvement and effort. There's no real shortcut. So people need to do things like learn how to do grammar, sentence, and article trees, learn how to do grammar, paragraph, and article trees, and then actually do them for my articles. And that would help them understand my articles better. There are a lot of other things to work on too, but those are some of the big ones that would help. It's easier to figure out what to do next once you've done those steps. Then you can see what is going wrong and what seems like the most urgent problem currently. Whereas right now, I think the reading issues are severe enough that it's hard to tell which other issues are the most important. Like, sometimes people seem quite bad at logic. However, that might be because they're making reading errors rather than logic errors. So it's possible that improving the reading will actually make them better at logic too. If it doesn't, then some sort of logic study would be one of the next steps to consider. If you're to work on logic, what you'd have to do, again, is find things that you can practice and automate so your subconscious can spot certain fallacies or notice certain non sequiturs or something. You want to come up with a way to make like worksheets or drills or something. You need to be able to be really confident that you're able to check your own work. They need to be things where you know what you're doing enough, that you have enough expertise and experience and practice to use your own judgment well. And then you practice them enough to make them automatic, and then you can work on the next steps. This is common with people's professions, for example, where there are a lot of things they know related to their profession where they're right and they're confident about it. And over the years of doing it, it's gotten easier and more intuitive. Then people come along and they try to do philosophy, but they've spent much less time on it. And then they skip a bunch of steps. You need to find something to do with philosophy that is adjacent to your current knowledge. You can only have high rational confidence at stuff that you already know, or that is only like a little step away from what you already know. You can't make big jumps away from what you already know without a lot of risk of error. So I hope people will pay close attention to the grammar and other tree videos and will actually do their own practice. I think it's one of the most important steps that will help lead to them understanding my advanced articles well and being able to use the advanced ideas in their lives instead of just reading them, being entertained, thinking it sounds nice, being able to say clever things in philosophy discussions, but not actually making better decisions or learning more effectively or whatever. People do not get full value out of my advanced articles because they don't get to the point that those things are intuitive and used in their daily life. And automating better reading skills and interpretation skills will help towards making that actually work. And if you run into any problems, you can share them on the forum. If anything is blocking you, no matter what it is, if it's blocking philosophy progress, it is a relevant thing that would be good to post about.